Hello, I'm Judy Sternberg, co-president of the League of Women Voters of the Rochester metro area. The League is pleased to be a co-sponsor and contributor to this 2020 primary election debate with the Democratic candidates for State Senate District number 56. The League is a nonpartisan political organization that does not support or oppose candidates or political parties. We encourage informed and active participation in government and believed informed voters are the backbone of our democracy. We are grateful to WROC-TV News 8 for presenting this program and remind viewers who wish to vote by mail that June 16th is the last day to mail back absentee ballot applications, and June 22nd is the deadline for mailing back completed ballots. For more information on the candidates who will be on your ballot, we invite you to visit the League's online voter guide at vote411.org. Thank you.
Greetings. I am Dr. Donna Harris, Social Action Co-Chair for the Rochester Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. We are thrilled to be a partner with the League of Women Voters and WROC to offer this opportunity to learn about the platforms of Democratic candidates for the State Senate 56th District. Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, founded 107 years ago at Howard University, is a nonpartisan organization of college-educated women committed to public service with a primary focus on the Black community. The Rochester Alumni Chapter, chartered in 1965, serves Greater Rochester with programs that reflect a 5-point programmatic thrust, including political awareness and involvement. We sponsor social action activities that include voter registration, education, and mobilization. We thank WROC for hosting tonight's debate. Please get out to vote. Early voting begins June 13th and ends June 21st. Thank you and have a great evening.
From your local election headquarters, this is a special presentation of News 8.
News 8 is your local election headquarters. I'm Adam Chodak. Thank you for joining us. With all that's happening around the world and the country right now, it's easy to forget that there is an election coming up in our area. New York State's primary election is still set for June 23rd. On the ballot, the Democratic candidates for the New York State Senate's 56th District. They are Jeremy Cooney, who worked for the late Congresswoman Louise Slaughter, 2 New York governors and the mayor of Rochester, Hilda Rosario Escher, the former CEO of the Ibero-American Action League, and Sharita Trawick, adjunct professor of criminal justice at RIT, executive director of Young and Gifted Incorporated, and elected member of the Greece Central School Board. They join us now via Zoom for this debate. As we get going, I do want to thank the League of Women Voters and Delta Sigma Theta for co-hosting this debate. The first question is going to be a little bit different than all the other questions that follow it. It's going to be directed at all 3 candidates, and all 3 candidates will have about a minute and a half to answer it. So here it is. All 3 of you are fairly well-liked and respected in our community. So the question is, what separates you from the other 2 candidates? What will make you a better state senator than the other 2? We're going to start with Sharita Trawick. Ms. Trawick.
Thank you so much for the question, Adam. I'd like to take an opportunity to thank the League of Women Voters as well as Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and Channel 8 for hosting this forum. It is so important that we get our message out to the voters so they can make an informed choice. You asked the question, what sets me apart from my other 2 opponents? And I think first and foremost, I'm already an elected official in the town of Greece. I ran for school board, I won. I've been sitting on the school board, serving the people of the 56th district already. I'm on the job already, boots on the ground. In addition to that, I bring my passion as an educator, adjunct professor of criminal justice at RIT. I've also worked for both houses of the New York State Legislature, both the Assembly and the Senate. In addition to that, I've run my own nonprofit organization for the last 14 years, serving families, children and families, seeing them get access to resources and also basic essentials. So I bring this experience to the table. I think we're in a time right now where we need a leader that has had experience on all different levels. In addition to that, I'm a mother. I'm a mother of 2 school-age children. So there are concerns right now that are happening that I think, again, having that experience with children in school, I bring that to the table. I also have parents that are aging, that have health concerns. So I am living my platform day by day. So this is what I bring to the table. I believe it distinguishes me. In addition to that, people in the community know that they can count on me. I'm someone that listens. And if I say I'm going to be working on a problem to help you, I will do that. So I thank you so much for the opportunity to share that experience. And going to Albany does not scare me. I'm not there to make friends. I'm there to bring home resources for the 56th district. And that's what I will do as the next state senator.
Ms. Trawick, thank you. Ms. Rosario Escher.
First, I want to thank Channel 8 and you, Adam, for allowing me the opportunity to participate in this debate. And let me thank you as well for the coverage you provided of the tragic weekend just passed. It is crucial to our democracy that we have an informed public. I was in North Clinton on Sunday cleaning up with neighbors and business owners, and then I joined the mayor and other community leaders at Frontier, where over 2,000 community members came together to help bring stability to this crisis. When I moved to this community at age 25, I faced a lot of barriers. I was a female in a male-dominated culture. I did not speak the language, and I had nothing. I knew I wanted more, and I wanted to do more for Rochester. I fought for families, and I fought for our whole community. This work allowed me to build relationships and sitting rooms that are vital for our recovery. Right now, we need proven leadership, not unproven promises. Please go to my webpage, hildaforny.com, and see for yourself the experience I bring to the table. Now is not the time to gamble on leadership. It is time for us to come together. Thank you.
Ms. Rosario Escher, thank you. Mr. Cooney, what do you think makes you stand apart?
Thanks, Adam, and good evening, everyone. I'm so glad we could be together safely in these very uncertain times. I'm Jeremy Cooney, and I'm so proud to be the endorsed Democrat running for the state Senate by the Monroe County Democratic Committee. Many of you know that I got into this race 2 years ago because I believe that healthcare is broken in New York. My own family struggled with healthcare when I lost my mom to cancer and dementia just a few years ago. And it's still broken today, and we need to do more. So I am excited to be in this race because I have been preparing and serving our community for years. And the formula is relatively simple. Many of you know that I got my start working for the late and great Congresswoman Louise Slaughter almost 20 years ago. And here's what I learned. You pick up the phone and you answer and you follow up and you deliver and you never stop showing up. That's what I'm going to do as the next state senator for the 56th district.
Mr. Cooney, thank you. So we're going to get into the regular questions now, and it's going to work like this. I'm going to direct it to one candidate. They'll have a minute and a half to answer. And then the other candidates, if they want, will have a minute for a rebuttal each. And then if the conversation is going or warrants, I will assign 30 seconds to a particular candidate so they can respond, and we'll see how it goes from there. The first question is one from the League of Women Voters. And it says this: last week's murder of George Floyd, like that of too many other black persons at the hands of rogue law enforcement officers, shocked the nation. And here's the question, and this is directed to Sharita Trawick. What should New York State do to address this problem?
And thank you for the question, and very relevant. So as an African-American woman, a Black woman, that also has a Black son that's 14 years old, I've been married to a Black man for 20 years. This definitely concerns me. You know, it shined a light on what we need to do more in our country. You know, it wasn't so much the killing was tragic. Actually, let's call it what it is, Adam. It was a public execution at the hands of people that are supposed to be sworn to protect and serve. And so, yes, our country is angry, our city is angry, people are hurt, they're confused. But what we need to do in New York State is we need to make progressive steps toward making sure this doesn't happen, whether it's whether it is we're talking about Amadou Diallo, whether we're talking about Tamir Rice, whether we're talking about Trayvon Martin. As a mother, I watch these things in horror. And we are tired of seeing our young sons and our young brothers and our young fathers being killed by police officers. And so New York State, what we need to do is we need to start revealing the records. We need to repeal 50A. That right now it prohibits police officer personnel records from being open to the public. We are in a situation now where we need to know if officers have disciplinary records so that we can give them the proper help and services that they need so they're not just on the streets unchecked. Number two, we need to make sure that we're collecting information that helps us to identify how many people of color are being pulled over, how many murders are happening, how many deaths are happening in our jails. We need to make sure that we're being aggressive when we're talking about racial profiling and have that data. But then on the other hand, we also need to make sure that we're listening to our officers. And in all of this pain, we also recognize that our police force is important to us. These are the people that do serve us, and not all of our police officers are bad. I was encouraged to see how many police officers stood with protesters, were there speaking out against breaking that blue wall and saying, this is not what we do. This is not our oath. This is not what we stand for. So I want to see us come together and move forward. It's time to have a dialogue. It's time to sit down in the community and the police officers. We need to have a conversation. They need to hear us and we need to hear them so that we can really move forward with solutions, because we can't continue to have this. I refuse for my son to have to grow up and I have to worry about whether he's going to make it home, or my husband. I'm tired of sleepless nights. It's time to move to action. And I believe those agenda items I just mentioned will get us there. Right. Thank you, Adam.
Ms. Treywick, thank you. And a reminder to all candidates, the first answer, 1.5 minutes. If we can keep it to that, that will allow us to get to more questions. 1-minute response. And by the way, Ms. Rosario Escher, I apologize. We had some audio issues on our end. The first question was going to be directed to you, but take a minute, and then after we get to this question, we'll hit up the next one. So your minute response to that, Ms. Rosario Escher. Ms. Rosario Escher, can you hear me?
Hello?
Hi.
Yes. Hi. What happened this weekend in Rochester and throughout the whole country is not over. And it will leave a wound that will take a long time to heal. Right now in this country, it's a crime to be poor. It's a crime to be black or brown. We have criminalized poverty. But the coming together of the community on Sunday is cause for hope. The tragedy of Minneapolis is one more in a long line of conflicts that has become commonplace between law enforcement and ordinary citizens. We cannot allow even one more tragic death like this to occur. I'm proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with my black and brown brothers and sisters and all others who sincerely detest and resist the needless, brutal murder of George Floyd. This senseless, shameful, and totally unnecessary murder at the hands of the Minneapolis police represent a scourge in our nation that we must continue to seek to eradicate.
Ms. Rosario Escher, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Cooney?
I haven't been able to sleep well since the murder of George Floyd, and I know many of our viewers feel the same way. But let's be very clear. Whether in Minneapolis or in Rochester, these are not new acts of police brutality. What is new is the technology which is exposing us to this plague of racism that has spawned across our country for generations. Enough is enough. So what am I going to do? In the state Senate, I'm going to pass legislation that's going to strengthen and hold accountable those who commit hate crimes. I want to make the office of the special prosecutor underneath the New York Attorney General's office permanent. And right here in Rochester, I'm going to work with our new Police Accountability Board to bring more transparency to our criminal justice system. I have to share with all of our viewers tonight that I have never been prouder as a New Yorker, as a Rochesterian, to walk peacefully, hand in hand with our neighbors, thousands of our neighbors saying enough is enough. You can count on me to listen to the message and to get things done in Albany.
Mr. Cooney, thank you. And this next question is for Ms. Rosario Escher, and it's going to come from a community group, La Cumbre. And I just want to take a brief minute because a lot of folks out there may not know what this group is. La Cumbre is a nonpartisan forum of members of the greater Rochester area community and others to meet, discuss, coordinate, facilitate, organize, and collaborate in order to assess and improve the lives of Latinos, Hispanics relating to arts and culture, economic development, education, and government. And Ms. Rosario Escher, you had mentioned in your last comment that this recent turn of events has impacted the black and brown communities. So this question is in that vein. The Latino population in Monroe County continues to grow at a staggering rate. In the 56th Senate District outside of the city of Rochester, the towns of Gates and Greece have shown some of the largest population increases for Latinos. As our next state senator, how would you work with the Latino community to find safe, welcoming, and dedicated spaces at the planning table to inform your legislative priorities?
Well, you know, when Hurricane Maria happened, there were 5,000 Puerto Ricans that moved to Rochester, you know, and I was able to galvanize the community and bring different agencies and government entities relocate all of these Puerto Ricans. And you know something, I also was working with the Greece City School District because they had a lot of Latinos and African Americans moved there. So they called James Norman, the former president of AD, for us to help because they wanted to know more about how to teach our brown and black kids. And you know something, what is really interesting is that I still receive calls from Puerto Ricans that moved here. And I also receive calls from families that are really thankful for what we did for them. So, you know, working with the Latino community is what I have done for the past 30 years, and I continue to do it even now.
Ms. Rosario Escher, thank you so much. Mr. Cooney, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm so glad the question was asked because I can tell you there are so many populations. Latinos are new American populations in the city of Rochester, like the Nepalese and the Somali populations, which are part of the 56th Senate District, which go invisible. How much longer do we have to wait? Can't we get workforce development resources into these neighborhoods? Can't we train our teams to be more culturally competent? Can't we start showing up and listening so we're not just coming to a press briefing or a ribbon cutting, but we're actually meaningfully making a difference in the lives of so many families in Rochester? I'm ready to do that work. I'm proud to be endorsed by the New York Immigration Coalition because they recognize that a new New York is reflective of the diversity of our great state. If elected, I'm so proud to be the first Asian American to ever be elected to serve from upstate New York. It's time that we start valuing diversity. It's time that we start listening to our Latino citizens. It's time that we start making an inclusive Rochester for all.
Mr. Cooney, thank you. Ms. Trawick, your response?
Thank you so much, Adam. I'm going to approach the question from an education perspective. What I do know is that as educators within our districts, one of the big challenges that we had is resources for our English second learners and being able to have the resources to help them be able to learn the language and do well in our educational settings. So I would work with the Brown community to make sure that we have the resources available to help the students and support them and their families, and so that they are feeling welcome as they're here in our districts. In addition to that, you know, a lot of folks that came over from Puerto Rico, they were registered teachers, certified teachers, and I would accelerate that process and making sure that we can bring them into our schools so that they can help us teach our Brown communities. So these are some of the things that I have seen, boots on the ground. I know this is a problem that exists currently. And again, you'll hear me say throughout this time that our children are our legacy. Our children are our future. You know, many of these populations, they rely on their children to be their translators, to help them. So we have to make sure our educational institutions are providing them the support that they need.
Right.
So I am open to doing whatever I can to help our Brown communities. Through my nonprofit organization, we've already been working with Brown and Black and low-income communities, so this isn't something that is new to me. And being someone that is a part of a marginalized group myself, I know how important it is to desire a seat at the table, but access not be there.
Great.
So this is what I would, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We do have to keep those responses to a minute. This next question, Ms. Trawick just brought up education and students, and it moves directly into the next one. And this one is from Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and it's directed to Mr. Cooney. The Rochester City School District continues to face financial and academic challenges. What specifically would you do to ensure that children within RCSD receive access to a quality education?
Thanks, Adam. As a son of a public school teacher, I can tell you education is critically important to me. But here are the facts. The Rochester City School District parents and students are owed $97 million by Albany. We are not getting our fair share, and this is not new. So we can't have a conversation about community schools or increasing social workers or making sure that we have health clinics in our schools because we can't pay the bills. It's time that we send a representative to Albany to join the Education Committee, to fight for those resources, to be part of the new Democratic majority. And I'll tell you, as Diane and I start a family, this is deeply personal to us. We can't afford to get this wrong. I'm the only one race that graduated from the Rochester City School District. So let me tell you this. It may just take a Rochester City School graduate to go to Albany and finally get things done.
All right, Ms. Trawick, your response to that?
So, you know, I don't think that I disagree with my opponent. I don't think you have to be a city school graduate to see that the problems in our city school district stem from poverty. They stem from our communities being broken. They stem from lack of resources that are available, lack of housing. They stem from teachers not having enough, you know, diversity in our teaching pool. Yes, our districts across the board are owed tons of money, not just the city district, our towns are owed money too, but yet our districts continue to function. What we need is fiscal oversight. We need to make sure that we're holding our school boards accountable. We need to make sure that parents have a seat at the table. We also need to make sure that we have the support services in place. Where there isn't money to get services, we have community partners. Community schools make sense because it's partnerships from the community. It's not additional money coming from Albany, but it is you partnering with organizations to support the needs of your students. And this is what I would fight for as your next state senator.
Very good. Ms. Trawick, thank you. Ms. Rosario Asher, your thoughts on this?
Yes, an unintended consequence of this crisis is the realization of the importance of our teachers, the job they do, and the need to give our schools the resources they need. Schools all around the district are in financial trouble. It's not only the Rochester City School District, it's everywhere. Brockport, Hilton, Spencerport, Greece, Brighton, all need to get their fair share. I have a long history of working on the challenge of educating our children. We must take a holistic approach to education to expand the understanding that it's not only educational programs, it is also working with parents to eliminate the barriers they face and help them to achieve their goals. From working on Women and Girls Council that the governor appointed me to, and the education task force that I created when I was at Ibero and WROC the Future, I have gained the experience to bring home the resources we need. I have with the Greece School District and also the City School District. I know where the holes are. As CEO of Ibero, we started one of the first and most successful charter schools in Rochester to meet the needs of the brown and Black kids. I am a mother and a grandmother, and I tell you, for my daughter, it has been, this crisis has not been easy for her. Yeah. But she's working from home. She has 3 kids, right, and they all want her attention, you know. So we have to make sure that the districts get the fair share that they need.
Yeah. Well, I do want to, and you can finish that thought, because I do want to direct things right back to you, Ms. Rosario Escher. I want to get the assigned order back on track here. This question, the state is pushing for the legalization of cannabis. What is your position on that? And if you want to finish your previous thought, you can, or you can go directly to this one. It's up to you. Mm-hmm. Your position on, I apologize, we're having some technical issues.
My position on marijuana?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. I think that we need to pass that, and that will bring extra resources to our state, which we need the extra resources right now with this crisis.
So you are in support of the legalization of?
Absolutely, I am, yes.
Okay, very good. And Ms. Trawick?
I'm also in support of the legalization of marijuana to bring in extra resources for our area. In addition to that, I want to see some of those resources be diverted back to the communities that have been ripped apart from the sales of marijuana and the incarceration of those who have, been selling marijuana, because it shouldn't be we legalize it and the corporations get to make all the money off of it. We need to reinvest in those communities that have been dissipated by marijuana. Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Cooney.
I also support the legalization of recreational marijuana, because this is going to happen in New York State, and I want Rochester and the Finger Lakes region to get ahead of it. We talk about economic benefit. Well, let's talk about what that means. That's thousands of jobs for people in upstate New York. Why? Because we have the land for the cannabis crops. And we know from Colorado that between 2014 and 2019, over that 5-year period, almost $1 billion was received in new tax revenue to the state. That money could be used to help fund our schools. I also agree that this money be reinvested within communities of color, but I'll go one step further. I think we need to expunge the criminal records of those who have been locked away for these marijuana offenses. Let's get people out of jail cells and back to work.
Mr. Cooney, thank you. And this next question is going to go right back to Mr. Cooney. And it's from a group called Unicon. They support both contractors and unions in the construction industry in our area. And their question is this: funding for Rochester and Monroe County's infrastructure has long lagged behind that of similarly sized cities. If elected, what will you do to ensure that Rochester gets its fair share of critical infrastructure funding? Mr. Cooney.
After the Great Depression, it was infrastructure which helped rebuild our nation. And upstate New York needs that same investment of infrastructure as we recover from this pandemic. In the state Senate, the infrastructure money primarily comes from the Transportation Committee. Now, Rochester has not gotten its fair share when it comes to infrastructure dollars. It doesn't take a genius to realize when you drive around Rochester, we need help. But it's more than just potholes. It's about how people get to work, and it's about creating jobs for people to get to work. So I'm committed to being part of that conversation. You need to have the relationships and the experience in Albany to know where that money is. That's why I've been proud to be endorsed by so many public labor unions, including our operating engineers, who know that getting people back to work is the best way for our community to move forward.
And Ms. Trawick, your response to that?
One of the lessons that came out of the COVID-19 crisis that we're still in, early on, we heard that, you know, one of the reasons it was such an issue is because we weren't going to have the infrastructure to be able to deal with the crisis. You know, our hospitals would not be able to take the amount of patients that could potentially be coming in. So that is alarming to me. And it helped shine a light on what we need to do moving forward. We do need to we need to stop closing hospitals. We need to be creative. We need to have the infrastructure should this happen again. And we do need to make sure that we invest in our roads. We do need to make sure that we are investing in, you know, even our buildings, our school buildings. So infrastructure is important. We need to make sure that people can have a way back to work and back home. So something that I definitely fight for. We are a growing city. We are a thriving city. People want us to believe we're just poor and downtrodden, but that's not true. We have some of the most innovative businesses right here in Rochester. We have some of the most creative people right here in Rochester, and we need to invest in the town where we live. We need to invest in the city where we live. So yes, I am in support of infrastructure, and I will add this. Anytime I'm driving and I see people working on our bridges and on our roads, I get excited because I know our taxpayers are at work. And Albany does need to give us our fair share, and I will fight for that.
All right, Ms. Trawick, thank you. Ms. Rosario Asher, your thoughts on this?
Yes. I sit in the Regional Economic Development Council with former Mayor Bob Duffy. So we work constantly on the economic development needed to get us through recovery. Just last Friday, because I sit in the Empire State Development Board, which is the economic engine of New York State, we met and we talked about some of the projects that we are working on to bring money to the community. So as of Friday, Albany approved $100 million for small businesses to recover, and basically, the governor had approved $167 million for the unemployed and for training for profit companies and not for profit companies also to come together, and we can just cut the budget as some are advocating. Even the governor says those cuts would come from healthcare, education, public safety, and all of which is very unacceptable to me. My plan would be not only to pass the billionaire tax on the wealthiest, legalize marijuana, pass legislation to allow sports wagering, to capture the incredible revenues leaving the state in this industry. Work with our federal government, the leaders, Senator Schumer, Senator Gillibrand, to pass the House recovery bill that brings billions and billions of dollars to save state and local government. I have worked through financial crisis before and successfully worked to bring tax dollars and cut our fair share to this community. I know I can do it again.
Great.
Like I said at the beginning, to do this, we need proven leadership, not unproven promises. And I tell you, the governor has already started working on those projects, infrastructure projects.
Ms. Rosario Asher, thank you. Again, responses right around a minute so we can keep going here. Ms. Trawick, this question is directed to you, and it's from the League of Women Voters. And the question is this. New York State recently passed many election law reforms, but same-day registration and no-excuse absentee balloting must be passed again by the legislature. Again, this is from the League of Women Voters. Will you vote yes on these measures? Would you vote in favor of automatic voter registration?
Absolutely. I support this 100%. I think that we have to start to make moves to allow people to have access to voting. Right now, I'm very concerned that there are going to be people that are disenfranchised because there are going to be less polling locations that are available. People don't understand the multiple ballots that they're getting in the mail. I've had several folks reach out to our campaign confused. And so if any way that we can simplify the process so that people can participate, this is a democracy, a government by the people. If the people aren't allowed a voice and access, then we're no longer operating under that premise. So yes, I would definitely vote in favor of making sure that people have access to vote. That is a huge concern of mine. So yes, I would vote yes.
Thank you. Ms. Rosario Escher, your response?
Absolutely. I really think that this country makes things very, very difficult and very complicated. So anything that we can do to really educate and make it easy for people to vote, I am for it.
Mr. Cooney.
Dr. King said that voting was the foundation stone for all of our political activity. He's right. We have to have a more engaged citizenry, and that means voting. Now, I support automatic registration so that when young people to get a driver's license or get a New York identification document, they can choose to sign up to register to vote. We always talk about as a community that we want the next generation to step up and to participate. This is the way to do it. Let them have a chance to register to vote early on, so that's not a vote that's taken away from them later on in life. I also support that we have to move on from these archaic old laws and rules, which mean that you can't register and vote on the same day, or you have to change your address weeks in advance to be able to register an election. With all the technology that we have, we should be using that to empower people, to let their voices be heard. And I would fully support that in the New York State Senate.
Mr. Cooney, thank you. The next question is directed to Ms. Rosario Escher, and this one comes from Delta Sigma Theta sorority, and it says, COVID-19 has highlighted systemic racial disparities in healthcare access, treatment, and outcomes, again from Delta Sigma Theta. How do you envision addressing racial inequalities or inequities in healthcare access, treatment, and outcomes related to the pandemic?
Yeah. One thing I know is that without your health, you have nothing. And we have seen this through this pandemic, that our current health system is broken. I believe in universal health care. People lost plans around like single payer, health care and Medicare for all. What I know is that people who are in poverty need decent health care, but they need it now, not tomorrow, not 5 years from now. A few years ago, I worked with James Norman on the Healthcare Coalition. So he was the chair of the African American Coalition. I was the chair of the Latino Health Coalition. And we worked together to improve the health outcomes and the health disparities in Black and Brown communities. So I believe that it comes down to this. People need access to good health care, no matter what the cost is. None of the other candidates can compare to with my experience. When I was CEO of Ibero, we were the first agency to have telemedicine, so people had access. I will fight to make sure we are innovative in our approach, like Ibero was 10 years ago with telemedicine. Parents didn't have to leave their jobs to come and pick up the kids and take them to the doctor. They were seen right there through telemedicine, and families from the neighborhood. And if you know where we work, it was in the North area, where one of the most distressed, if not the most distressed neighborhood in Rochester.
Thank you.
So from neighborhoods, people from the neighborhood would come and use the telemeds when they were feeling sick.
Great.
It gives people access. I worked with Anthony Jordan for 15 years, and through two of their economic crises, I was the board chair for the Rochester Psychiatric Center, and I fought for beds. They were being eliminated from care. They were eliminating beds. They were closing hospitals, and I tell you, I fought for that. One of the unintended
Ms. Rosario-Escher,
consequences is...
I'm sorry,
yeah.
we can come back to it in the next question if you want to, but I do have to move on to the response.
Okay.
I apologize.
Thank you.
1 minute, Mr. Cooney.
Our healthcare system is broken. We've talked about that a little bit tonight so far. But our healthcare system is also a system of haves and have-not, and that's not new. We have had report after report and studies showing us that one zip code can determine one's lifespan. That's not right. We have got to look at this differently. That's why I support universal health care. That's why I support the New York Health Act at New York State Senate. And we know that if we can provide access early on, we take away these awful choices that so many of our neighbors are faced with. I've talked to people over the last couple of years about them choosing bringing their child to a pediatric visit or putting food on the table. Co-pays shouldn't be that decision. How many of our seniors are struggling to pay for prescription drugs? This is ridiculous. We have got to do better as a nation and as New York. I am committed to making real reform changes about healthcare in New York because healthcare is a right and I'm going to fight for it.
Mr. Cooney, thank you. Ms. Trawick, your response?
Yes. Well, it didn't take COVID-19 for me to know that there were healthcare disparities in the Black and Brown communities. I grew up in a community of poverty where I saw people die early because they didn't have access to proper health care, from diabetes, hypertension, and other environmental asthma, So I know that these healthcare disparities exist. And what we need to do is we need to make sure that we have a healthcare system where people have access. The telemedicine, really people are and people I've talked are now becoming aware of it because of COVID. You can't go to the doctor. I was happy to hear Ms. Rosario-Escher say that her organization served that community, but I never heard of it before in the communities that I frequent or the people that I knew. I knew parents that had to take off of work and did have to make that choice because they had to take their kid to the doctor. I know people that are still struggling with transportation issues, struggling with how they're going to pay for medication. And in New York State, we do need a single payer healthcare system. But to balance that, we need to figure out how we're going to pay for it. So in addition to pushing for that legislation, I also want to see us make some investments in our economic development so that we can start to bring in more revenue. So as we do offer this universal health care, we have a way to pay for it so that people can have more access. But I live and breathe this every day. I know people right now that don't have health insurance, and it's because they can't afford it or they don't have access to it, and it is flooding our hospital emergency rooms because people aren't getting consistent care. And this is not, and we're not talking about, but going to Albany, I will bring these issues to the table and fight for solutions.
Right. Ms. Rosario-Escher, she mentioned your organization. I'll give you 30 seconds if you'd like to respond.
Well, the telemedicine is the way of the future. And I tell you that in the Northeast, all the neighbors, all the residents of that area would come to the agency when they were feeling sick. So they had the access. Not only that, but you have Anthony Jordan that is right there, right in the neighborhood. You have a clinic right there. And the residents that do not have health insurance can go to Anthony Jordan and they will not be charged. But all I can say is that in the health system now, yes, is broken, and we need our people to have access, but we can't wait for a new system to start. We have to be able to look at that 5% of the population that do not have health insurance, and we need to get them insured now. And we can come with the solution. Once I'm in Albany, I will fight to make sure that those individuals are insured, and that other people that cannot afford the health insurance, that they are covered also. But we cannot wait 5 years. So people, what are they going to do?
Yeah.
Be sick and not have any place to go?
Right.
Go to emergency? That costs a lot more money.
Right. Ms. Rosario Asher, thank you. This next question is directed to Mr. Cooney, and it's about bail reform. As all of you know, one part of the bail reform package that was passed recently had to do with the elimination of bail for most misdemeanors and nonviolent felonies. A recent change now allows judges to issue bail to violent repeat offenders. Would you have supported this partial rollback? And I guess it gets to the question of what are your thoughts about the bail reform package? What would you change? What would you not change?
As a lawyer, I can tell you that justice is supposed to be blind. And that's why I do support the criminal justice reforms that the Senate took last year, because we finally got rid of cash bail, which had a criminal justice system and a justice system based on the size of one's wallet. That's not right. But the conversation that I want to have is what we didn't do in the state Senate, which is to make an investment in pretrial services. These are the things that are so important to preventing incarceration in the first place. That means access to mental health services. That means more drug and alcohol addiction treatment centers. That means more advanced technology with electronic monitoring. I want to keep families together. I want to stop having conversations with about how many people we can lock up, and I want to start having conversations with how can we prevent that action from occurring in the first place. Mr.
Cooney, thank you. Ms. Trawick, your response?
So part of my platform is criminal justice reform. And in terms of the Bail Act, the only drawback that I particularly saw was the fact that when we passed the legislation, we didn't have enough people at the table. There were people that were missing, the people that are the boots on the ground. And so as we have seen with some of the rollbacks that needed to happen, I want to make we're having that dialogue. We have our law enforcement officials at the table. We have our DAs and our prosecutors, so they can all weigh in on, and our judges on how this needs to happen. Mm-hmm. I am happy that now we have gotten rid of this system, and we have replaced some judicial discretion. So that part I'm happy about. But moving forward, we need to make sure that stakeholders are at the table. And yes, I am for criminal justice reform, not just bail reform, but right now we're dealing with a COVID crisis in our prisons. Our state prisons have outbreaks of COVID. Our local jails, we've had reports of outbreaks of COVID. So we need to look at that system as a whole. We need to look at alternatives to incarceration, expanding our mental health courts, expanding our drug treatment courts, looking at diversionary programs. Right. So there is a myriad of things around criminal justice reform that I want to work on, so we have better outcomes for our community. And as we're releasing folks, where are they going? What resources are we providing as a community so that they don't go back to the same behaviors? Thank you, Adam.
Ms. Trawick, thank you. Ms. Rosario Asher, your response.
Yes. Racism in any form and practice by any individual at any level of society or government cannot and must not be accepted or tolerated. As the next senator of New York's 56th district, I pledge to continue to forcefully fight, as I have done for my entire career and lifetime, for the rights and dignity of marginalized people and for social and economic justice. I am not new to this fight. I know that what it takes to break through walls of injustice. on behalf of people without power, voice. It's what I have always done, and what I will continue to do. And yes, I am pro bail reform.
Ms. Rosario Escher, thank you. We're going to move to our closing statements right now. We've asked the candidates to keep them between 1 to 1.5 minutes so we can time this out appropriately. The first person to give her closing statement is Sharita Trawick. Ms. Trawick, take it away.
Thank you again for this opportunity. When I got in this race, I knew that it was going to be difficult. And I knew that it was going to take someone who was committed to this community. I was born and raised right here in Rochester. I sit on the school board as an elected member, and I am already serving the people of the 56th district. I see the issues that are happening. I see the racial injustice that's happening, the disparities in our education system, the inequalities in our healthcare system, our criminal justice system, how we're opening our country as a result of COVID. So I am living this boots on the ground every day. I'm not coming with empty promises. I'm coming with a passion to go to Albany and fight for what we need for upstate New York. I want to make sure that our citizens are represented, their voices are heard. Our people are passionate about what they want. You talk to any voter and they know what they want in a representative. They want dedication, they want leadership, and they want someone that can come with fresh and innovative ideas. It doesn't take rocket science to do that. You don't need to be you don't need to have a specific pedigree or where you come from. I'm a woman that I've never been invited to the table, but in this instance, I'm pulling up a chair and I'll be happy to serve as your next state senator.
Ms. Trawick, thank you. Ms. Rosario Escher, your closing statement, please.
Okay. Reimagine our community so we don't end up like Gary, Indiana, but we become another Austin, Texas. Economic recovery after this pandemic is going to be one of the toughest challenges any of us has ever faced. New York State is facing a $20 billion deficit, and local governments and municipalities are facing equally as devastating shortfalls. As one upstate mayor said, we could cut all the salaries, all the administrators in the city government, and there still would have to be cuts in healthcare services, police, fire, and essential workers. Clearly, trying to balance the budget on the backs of these same essential workers who are getting us through this crisis and literally putting their life on the line by cuts, tax increases, and economics is not right. I came here with nothing, and I built a life. As I said before, we need to recover and need someone to fight for us who has the know-how to get the resources that our community needs. Please go to my webpage, hildaforny.com, and see for yourself the experience that I bring to the table. This election is not really about, it's about you. And I'm going to tell you something. I really don't have to be doing this, but this community really helped me to be successful. I always say that success doesn't come in isolation. You always have people that lift you up and that help you to be successful. And this community really, I came here with nothing, and I really, and now I'm running for New York State Senate. Tell me that this is not the American dream. I feel that I have to pay this community for what they have done for me.
Right.
Because I have been successful, because there have been so many people that really have come to my aid.
Ms. Rosario
I have
Escher.
one particular person that I love.
Yeah.
His name is Dutch Summers, and I call him my miracle worker.
Thank you very much.
Because he helped me along.
I appreciate it. Mr. Cooney, your response at the end here, your closing statement.
Thank you, Adam and Channel 8 for putting together this conversation. I got into this race 2 years because healthcare was broken. I've knocked on over 22,000 doors from Brighton to Brockport, listening to you, the voters, on what's important to you. Here's what I heard. 1, healthcare is still broken. We need to make sure seniors can afford prescription drugs. 2, we need to get our fair share of public school dollars from Albany. That's both in the city and in our suburban towns. And 3, we need to leave New York a better place for the next generation by reducing our carbon footprint. Look, we don't need another do-nothing Albany politician. We need a homegrown public servant. I was raised and educated in this city by a single mom. I have spent my entire career, whether in government or the YMCA, giving back to this community which raised me. I'm ready to serve, and I would be honored to earn your vote. Please visit us at jeremycooney.com to learn more information. Thank you, stay safe, and onward we go.
I want to thank all 3 of you for joining us today, a very important conversation. I want to thank you, the audience, for watching. I want to thank the League of Women Voters and Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated for co-hosting this event. Remember to vote. June 23rd, we'll have more information on early voting over at rochesterfirst.com. Have a good evening.